Well, I've come back to this area that I garden in combination with running the hens in. I started this a couple of years ago and I've grown chickpeas in here, I've grown pumpkins in here across the last 2 summers. During the winter I've had oats in here that the hens come and feed on. And as you can see, they've had a pretty good feed. There's still a little bit around here that they haven't managed to eat and crop right down, but I'm now ready to come in and plant a summer crop. What I'm going to put in here this summer is some beans for drying. Now, last summer I successfully grew red kidney beans and I'll grow some of those again. I also want to experiment with a white bean, a navy bean or northern bean as they're sometimes called. And also I'll continue to grow the scarlet runner beans here on this structure. Hopefully, I see there's one come through. Hopefully there'll be more come up from last year's roots from regrowth, and I'll plant some more seed to fill any gaps there. So the first mission is to come in here and mow. I'll mow down this oats, mulching it down into the soil. In a way, I'm really quite happy that the hens didn't eat down all the oats up this end. And that means that now that I've mowed it, there is quite a lot of green material here that will hoe into the soil with the rotary hoe and effectively create green manure. The reason is this end isn't as fertile. It's more clayey and it really needs a lot of this organic matter incorporating into the soil. Now, as I've said many times on this channel, it's not only the green that's on the top, but it's also the roots that are in the soil. And breaking all that up, incorporating that into the soil, will feed the worms and really improve it. Having rotary hoed, I have run some furrows in with the wheel hoe. This is the fastest and quickest way to work with an area like this. I'm adding a small amount of blood and bone. Not a lot, because beans don't need a lot. They will generate their own nitrogen and get the nutrition out of the soil very efficiently. But because this soil is not really up to full gardening par, it needs a little bit more. So now it's time to plant. And as I said, I've got 2 lots of beans to go in. The first one is red kidney beans. Now, these are the same red kidney beans that I grew very successfully last year. They've just come from a supermarket. You buy them in any store. Commercial beans that you'd buy for food, I'm using for seed. And as I said, last year, these germinated really well and grew quite successfully. The other bean that I'm trying is a white bean. Now, this is not very specific on this packet what type of bean it is. Most of these are what's called navy beans or sometimes great northern beans. I'm going to have a go, put some of those in. I haven't tested them for viability, so they might all germinate really well or nothing may come up at all. I expect it'll be something in between. I have divided this section in half, so one end will be the red kidney beans, the other the white beans. I've done it that way because the lower section tends to be more fertile than the top, and I wanted something fairly equal. I don't have any mechanical means of getting these in, so simply using the old-fashioned technique of just dropping them in randomly. Last year I noticed that these red kidney beans were a semi-climber. They wanted to put tendrils up to climb, and I really didn't know what to do with that. This year, the technique that I'm going to apply and try is to actually cut those off, because they didn't actually produce anything. The crop was down on the bush. The tendrils were basically a disadvantage in terms of the fact that they caught the wind. With the seed in the ground, it's time to come back and cover it up with the wheel hoe. In terms of water, I'll simply be relying on the moisture in the ground and our regular spring rain to germinate this seed. We've been getting such regular spring rain that no watering should be necessary. until maybe later in the summer. With the bush beans in the ground, I've come to have a look at these climbing beans. What I grew here last year were scarlet runners, or sometimes called 7-year beans. Now, they should come back from the roots because they are a perennial bean. But looking at it at this stage, and also when I put the compost around a little while ago, I didn't see a lot of sign that those roots were actually going to come back and grow. I've got one little plant coming through, and I'm inclined to believe that is coming from a seed, a stray seed, rather than coming from one of the roots, simply because of the shape of the leaves. So I've got some seed, and I'm going to put in some more seed here today. That gives me some certainty that I'm going to have some beans here. If the others come up, well, I can always pull out the seeds, but I know there were some that were missed anyway, so this way gives me a guarantee. These are seed that I kept myself. I simply reused a packet, and I simply have to work out how to get into it. These are a really pretty bean and really tasty to eat too. They can be eaten as a green bean if you want that, or kept for dry. So I'm just dropping a couple of seeds at the bottom of each one of these. If you haven't tried dry beans before, I suggest you give them a go. If you haven't got space for bush beans, which do take up a fair area, have a go at some climbing ones, which you can grow in a corner and are going to use that vertical space rather than the horizontal. They're really tasty, and it's good to have a crop like this that will store nicely across winter. We've jumped forward a couple of days, and I'm just in the process of planting out my climbing beans. Now, usually I have actually put these in as seed into the ground and directly germinated them. But this year I decided to experiment and germinate them in egg carton. These are Blue Lake climbers, and I grow these as fresh eating green beans. So I've got one plant per cell. I thought I'd bring you along and show you what they're like and how they're going. I'm planting them this morning because rain is expected this afternoon. It's already tried with a couple of very light showers this morning. So it's an ideal time to get them into the ground, and they'll settle in nicely over the next day or so. What I am doing with these is actually trying to peel off a fair bit of the cardboard and have it with the roots already, minimum disturbance, and I'm planting one plant per upright. And what I have found in the past is they really nicely wrap their way around these uprights in the reinforcement and go right up there, and they put the bulk probably of the beans up the top. This one's a fairly large plant. I think it was one of the first to germinate, and it's a really good size. Now, there's been a little bit of penetration of the roots you might see coming through the cardboard there, so I'm really being quite careful. I could plant it and not take this cardboard off, but they could be a little bit of an impediment, so I'm going to remove the stuff that I don't really need. I don't know at the bottom here, yes, I don't think I'll disturb too much of that, but you might see there the white roots are ready to go, so that should take off really nicely. And planting it still with those couple of beans out of the ground, a little bit deeper than it was. I think I can get away with that okay. So I have to get moving along with this because it is trying to rain as I speak. There's a long root on that one. And we'll get those in. I'm quite happy with that. So that's an idea if you wanted to try germinating them in the egg cartons. I think it's a good idea. How it'll go long term, how these will come away, I'm not sure, but I think with this rain, they'll really do well.